Joining us, former Deputy Assistant Secretary of State under President Obama, Joel Rubin, and national security analyst and vice chair of the Center for International Policy, Joe Cirincione. So, Joel, no address to the American public. There was a Truth Social post last night in the middle of the night, but we've gotten no formal address, no making of the case to the American public why this was a necessity and not a choice.
Yeah, Katie, that's the major gap. Look, the president, he needs to be leading from in front, not from behind. By doing this Truth Social post and just walking away and going to a fundraiser, he's not showing the kind of leadership we need out of a commander-in-chief. Now, I will say that the strikes certainly were a choice, but I do believe they were born out of necessity. But he needs to make that case. And it is a case that can be made, but if he doesn't, it's going to get away from him. The politics certainly are going to get away from him very fast. And as we know, when the politics disappear, your policy does as well.
Tell me why you believe they're born out of necessity.
Well, look, let's be blunt here. Iran, as an actor in the region, has been behaving in manners that completely undermine security across the region. Look what they're doing just now in response. They're striking multiple Arab capitals. They chose not to give up their nuclear program at these negotiations. Now, I've been a longtime advocate for nuclear negotiations. I spent years with my friend and colleague, Joe Cirincione, on that. But we are in 2026. We're not in 2015, and there was no nuclear deal on the table. One that was offered, and Iran walked away, and they backed October 7th. And I have to add that makes a major difference. This is not a country that can be trusted, not the regime it can be trusted that is. And I think that's why it was necessary, especially after the mass slaughter of civilians in Iran.
Joe?
Iran is an evil country, an evil regime, no question about it. It's hated in the region almost as much as Israel is. It's killed lots of people in the region in this century, almost as many as Israel has. But that doesn't mean you get to overthrow the country. This is a violation of the U.S. Constitution. Only Congress can declare war, and the UN Charter, which we wrote, that prohibits a country from using military threats to threaten the territorial integrity or political independence of another country. That's what Donald Trump is doing here. No legal justification, no support of the American people, no authorization from Congress, no clear plan. I think this war is more likely to accelerate regime change in America than it is in Iran.
You're making the comparison between Iran and Israel, and yeah, Israel has wreaked a lot of havoc lately, but Israel is a democracy and Iran is a fundamentalist regime that oppresses its own people and slaughters its own people. Do you want to make that direct comparison?
Absolutely. I'm just talking about the damage that a country is causing in the region. There are many repressive regimes in the world that are worse than Iran. North Korea, for example. Why aren't we overthrowing them? China, for example. Why aren't we overthrowing them? This doesn't give you the right to do it just because you disagree with a regime's behavior, no matter how odious. If you wanted to do it, build support for it. Do what George W. Bush did. Do what George H.W. Bush did. Go to the American people, make the case. Go to the UN Security Council, make the case. Trump did this on a whim.
Joel?
I really don't think he did it on a whim. And I have to say, quite frankly, when Iran backs Assad and 600,000 Syrians get killed, when it kills thousands of its own people in its country, when it creates Hezbollah that terrorizes the Lebanese, when it supports the Houthis that start a war in Yemen, we can't compare that to Israel and Israel's behavior in response to October 7th, which, while it's a horrible, horrible war in Gaza, it is not the same. And I have to say, with Iran and walking away from the table, essentially legging it out, look, they blew off, to be direct, Joe Biden for 4 years. They had a chance for 4 years to re-enter the JCPOA. They chose not to do it. They had a president who wanted diplomacy. They walked away from that. And then we saw their proxy in Hamas attack Israel and start a massive war in the region. That's what we have with this supreme leader who's now gone. That was his attitude. And I think that's why we see the fight that we are in right now.
Were you worried about Iran becoming like a North Korea? Joe, could you understand that worry that if Iran was able to eventually get a nuclear weapon, and as Joel says, he argues that they cannot be trusted, they've walked away from deals. If they get a nuclear weapon, then it's harder to deal with them, as we've seen and now understand with North Korea.
As Joel well remembers, because we worked on this together, Iran made a deal in 2014 and 2015.
Yes,
We had the
absolutely.
strongest non-proliferation agreement in a generation. We shrank Iran's program to a fraction of its size, put it in an iron box, and surrounded it with inspectors and cameras. If that deal was still into effect today, Iran would be years away from a nuclear weapon. We wouldn't
But it
have,
wasn't.
Trump blew up that deal. Trump left that deal,
Absolutely.
promised a bigger, better deal, which he hasn't delivered. The Oman mediator just today tweeted out his dismay at the U.S. ruining this negotiation. Iran had a proposal on the table that frankly was pretty good. They were going to suspend enrichment completely for several years and then not keep any material in their country. There was something here. We were close to a deal, but I don't think that's what Trump wanted. He wanted something else. He wanted this war for various reasons. He's not going to achieve his objectives. I think this war is going to discredit the military regime change strategy, and it's going to discredit the credibility of the United States and its president.
I want to jump in because
Well,
if you're
if I
looking at
could
the
add,
banner,
though.
hold on. If you're looking at the banner on our screen,
Yeah, Katie.
the Iranians are now reporting that the Ayatollah, the supreme leader, is dead. They're saying that he was martyred in U.S. attacks. So this is the first time that they are acknowledging that the U.S. and Israeli strikes on Iran killed the supreme leader. They had been denying it before. Donald Trump said he was dead. Now Iranian state TV is confirming it. Joel, we are where we are, regardless of whether it was a good idea, and there's a lot of argument that it was not a good idea right now. Can there be, in your estimation, from working at the State Department, regime change or regime alteration, better conditions, better negotiations, better posture, relationship with the United States with the Supreme Leader gone?
Well, I think certainly when the Supreme Leader disappears as he has from the scene, it opens up a variety of new possibilities for engagement with leaders in Iran. But I don't see regime change in the classic sense of what we saw in Iraq or Afghanistan as the policy. I see regime collapse and a hope and expectation, and it may very well just be an ephemeral hope, but a hope that the Iranian people themselves take charge and that we, the United States, do not go in and impose a new leader. And so I do think there are new possibilities. This supreme leader for 35 years massacred his people time and time again, rejected elections inside Iran time and time again, repressed his people from flowering. And if and only that, it's a good day that he's gone.
Joe, what about you?
Unfortunately, the loss of this leader is not the loss of the regime. As your previous panels and experts have shown, that there is no ability of the Iranian people to overthrow this regime at this point. You have a 200,000 member Revolutionary Guard, a 1 million person militia. They just slaughtered 10,000 or more people in 3 days protesting using small arms. There is no ability of the Iranian people to overthrow the regime. What I fear is that Donald Trump is going to get tired of this war in a matter of days. He's looking for some quick success. It won't be there. And then he's going to blame the Iranian people for not taking advantage of the opportunity he presented. If the point of this war was to change the subject from the Epstein files, it will succeed for a few days. If it was to prove that the United States can do what it wants around the world, I'm afraid it's going to fail. This is going to be a failure for the United States and a failure for the Iranian people, who deserve something much better than the regime they've been saddled with since 1979.
Again, Iranian state TV is now reporting that the supreme leader was killed in the American and Israeli strikes. Joe Cirincione, Joel Rubin, thank you, gentlemen. I appreciate it. Joining us, ranking